Hey there, everybody. This is Scott at Stand Your Ground Studio, and I want to talk a little bit about the 9/11 bill that's kind of steamrolling its way through Congress. As you've probably heard, it passed the Senate back on May 17th, and real quick, I want to make a point for everyone to remember going forward, which is that the 9/11 bill, which is the one that the Saudis threatened that huge sell-off about, that is a separate initiative from the release of the 28 missing pages. And I just say that really quick because whenever you read about them, they kind of get mentioned in the same breath a lot. And it's just something worth keeping in mind because the Saudis actually don't want the bill to pass, but they do want the 28 missing pages to be released. The White House doesn't want the bill to pass, but they are still thinking about the 28 missing pages. And I'm just going to leave it at that because it's just a worthwhile point. So this paragraph right here encapsulates everything I want to talk about. So it mentions the bill, the one that the Saudis don't want, and it passed the Senate unanimously on last Tuesday, bringing Congress closer to a showdown with the White House, which has threatened to veto the legislation. And there's two huge points in there, the first of which is that it passed the Senate unanimously, which is kind of a big word, because going back to an article I covered in an earlier video, which was this one, back when the Saudis made that huge threat, a major point was made here, too, which was the bill is an anomaly in a Congress fractured by bitter partisanship, especially during an election year. It's sponsored by politicians on both sides of the aisle who normally don't work together, or normally don't agree with each other. It passed through the Judiciary Committee in January without dissent. So it's without dissent in the Judiciary Committee. It passed unanimously in the Senate. And they're talking about getting it through the House of Representatives on an expedited basis. So it's basically a given that it's going to get passed through the House because they're expecting a clash with the White House. And that's where we're going to have our next big development in the story because they know Obama's already said he's going to veto it. And why that is laid out by John Kerry from back in February. He said that the bill in its current form would, quote, expose the United States of America to lawsuits and take away our sovereign immunity and create a terrible precedent. And I am willing to believe that this is a totally legitimate threat. They're putting it right out in front of us. It's a warning. And this has all the makings of being tied to that huge worldwide entanglement I always mention, where everybody kind of knows somebody, everybody's kind of got some guilt somewhere, they have some involvement that they shouldn't somewhere else in the world. And it also kind of reeks of how the narrative always creeps forward. We always have to give up our safety at the expense of getting truth. We always have to give up our freedom at the expense of our safety. So we always have to give up one thing to get another. And there's a vibe going on of the consequences be damned and the truth must be told because the families of the victims of 9/11 deserve some truth. This is from an article also in April on NBC News, and it's all about the 28 missing pages. But this paragraph kind of sums it up perfectly. Until these 28 pages are freed from the vault, the American people can't make an informed evaluation of their government's past and present foreign policy and its execution on the war on terror, which is a perfect summary of everything I've talked about in my playlist. The Road to World War III goes through, exposes the hierarchy, but also goes through 9/11. And there's very much that vibe of we're just going to kick the door down, and whatever happens, that's the way it's going to be. One thing to keep in mind is that the narrative is going to hit a snag and they're going to start talking about it more once it gets to the White House. What I think is really going to speed all of that up is what I've said in previous videos. It's what we've been warned about by the director of the CIA and other warnings by intelligence agencies. And Trump said it most recently is that we're going to get hit by terrorist attacks very soon. And in my opinion, I've been thinking it feels like it's going to happen this summer, some major terrorist event, however it needs to happen. It could be one huge one. It could be a whole bunch of small ones that show up at once. It could be any combination. The point is terrorism's coming home soon. And as I was lining up all these articles a few days ago, just to kind of tack on one more piece of evidence, this one came up. ISIS calls for more attacks on West during Ramadan. There's not much here. It's from a recording online, and it urges that followers carry out attacks during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which begins in early June and carries into July. So that seems to line up with everything that I'm talking about. And remember what I said in an earlier video, that when Trump gets proven right on one of these issues, people are going to start listening to him. He's going to start becoming dangerously relevant, and he's going to be able to get away with a lot more. So there's another point. I have talked time and again about how the release of the missing 28 pages will be directly tied to the reveal of a whole bunch of truth at a terrible time. All this corruption will be coming out, both directly related to it and not directly related to it. That being said, I've always had that throwaway line of the 28 missing pages and or other information, because there's always more information. And like other truthers have said, the 28 missing pages are basically a limited hangout, which they are. In the narrative, they're way bigger than that. It's like us knocking on the door of a whole world of truth and pain that people aren't ready for. This is the supposed mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, and he was captured back in 2003. His initials are KSM. You're going to see it again in a moment. I'm going to read these paragraphs here and just think worldwide entanglement and way too much truth coming out in the wrong way at the wrong time. One key question is to what degree did wealthy donors from the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, finance al-Qaeda and possibly the attacks through charities and other means? Another is why the Iranian government facilitated the transit of al-Qaeda members through Iran on their journey to the United States, Zelikow said, and that's the executive director of the 9/11 Commission. Similar questions have been raised about Pakistan. So we already have 3 nations right there, and just think about all of our entanglements there. Who doesn't like who does? Zelikow and others said the 28 pages won't answer those broader questions about 9/11. There are mountains of other investigative documents that could, but they're locked away. There are missing puzzle pieces to the overall issue of 9/11 as to the culpability and who was behind it. It is fair to say that there are additional insights that can be gleaned from these other sources. A couple of them are mentioned here, but the main repository by far of documents that could fill in major gaps in the public's understanding of 9/11 has been amassed over the past 10 years by investigators building the case against KSM, that's the guy above, and 4 9/11 co-conspirators so they can be tried by a military commission at Guantanamo Bay. If people want to get the truth about 9/11, the shortest route would be to bring the people responsible to trial, Zelikow said, because all the information that's been gathered in all those years since 9/11 would be available to then become a part of the public record. So I see the 28 missing pages. It's been said in another article, they're not really going to solve the issue. They're just going to make people more suspicious. It could just be one more plot point to get us to the ultimate truth, but it is directly related to what we're talking about. And again, all this is going to come up by the end because it's all about confusion and everyone is sort of completely guilty about something. And I will end on this note. I've brought it up before in this article here because, again, it's all about entanglement. Everyone's guilty. Everyone's tied in either directly or indirectly. Saudis have lobbying muscle for 9/11 fight, so they're embedded into our politics, into their, getting their public image painted in a positive way. It mentions 8 different firms. You can read about this. I want to mention this one because I've mentioned it once before. The Podesta Group is billing Saudi Arabia $140,000 a month for its public relations services, and it mentions all these communications between them. John David Podesta is the chairman of the 2016 Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. I just find it interesting her name always somehow comes up. So in 1988, he and his brother Tony co-founded Podesta Associates Incorporated. It's a government relations and public affairs firm, now known as the Podesta Group. The firm has close ties to the Democratic Party and the Obama administration and has been retained by some of the biggest corporations in the country, including Walmart, BP, and Lockheed Martin. I bring that up because I frequently talk about how the GOP is going to basically implode with their civil war between, like the group and Trump and whatever else is going to come out. But the Democrats won't be left unscathed either because everyone's got to look kind of guilty. You can do what you will with that information. And that's about everything I had lined up today. So just keep an eye on the narrative. There's going to be a little bit more to go. And over the summer, there's going to be that clash between Congress and the White House. And I think a terrorist event is coming to us this summer. That's what I think. I don't know exactly how or when, of course. Please share this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. I have a whole lot of content about this topic and others. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.